When we come back, Tiger King time. Don Lewis's daughter. Who's Don Lewis? He's the missing husband of Carole Baskin, you know, Tiger King's nemesis. Well, Don Lewis's daughters still want answers about what happened to their dad. They spoke with Julie Grant. We've got part 2 of that interview, including a letter written by Carole Baskin that you will not believe. That's next.
He had a decision to make because he had 2 girlfriends at the time, and he even asked Mother, he said, well, which one should I go with? And she told him, she said, neither one of them, but if you have to choose one, I'd take Pam over Carole because she's evil incarnate.
Wow, those are the daughters of Don Lewis. He was the former husband of Carole Baskin. Carole Baskin from the Tiger King docuseries, the arch nemesis and enemy of Joe Exotic, the Tiger King, right? They were these enemies, and Joe Exotic ends up in jail because he tried to have Carole Baskin killed. Well, now Don Lewis's daughters want answers about what happened to their father, the former husband of Carole Baskin. So Julie Grant spent some time. This is part 2 of her interview with the daughters of Don Lewis. Some interesting facts coming out when it comes to the relationship between Don Lewis and Carole Baskin.
He was seeing Carole before we even knew anything about the issues that he had. We were all married and in our 20s, I guess, before Mom even let us in on, you know, that Dad had the proclivity of seeking others outside of their marriage. I believe maybe 81.
It's 81.
81. Okay. Is when Dad was driving in Tampa, and he saw Carole walking down the street, and ended up picking her up. And they formed a relationship. Among others, she was not the only relationship he had during that time frame.
How was that for you when you learned of that, and you see your mom hurting, and you know that your dad's the source of that hurt?
Right. Well, we were all grown. Mother did a very good job of shielding us. When we were growing up, we had no idea that Dad had the issues that he did, and they were caused from some unfortunate events in his childhood. He was, at the age of 15, he had pulled a little prank and was sent to the Dozier School, Reform School for Boys in Marianna, Florida. And Dad was a very nice looking young man. And upon entrance to that school, the initiation that Dad got was being taken to it's called the White House. There's a whole organization called the White House Boys. There's about 500 of them that have survived that school. And he was handcuffed and raped, and he was there for 8 months. And that affected the rest of his life. He and Mother were married 1 year and 3 months after he got out of that school. He was 17 and she was 14. And they dearly loved one another, even to the day that Mother said, I can no longer live with this. They had been married 34 years. It was 1989. And he had, throughout their entire married life, had other women. And he did not understand why he would do that. It bothered him. He cried like a baby when Mother finally told him it was over, and she just couldn't deal with it. So she had lived with it. It is something she had learned to live with, because that was the only problem, and that's a major problem, but it was the only problem they had. They were very well paired personality-wise, work ethic-wise, everything. So when we found out about it, and I was 25, my world was rocked. I had a child who was about 1.5 years of age, and I got a call from Mom, and she filled me in briefly. And then Dad called me later to ask me to come get our brother, who was about 13 at the time. And I just asked him on the phone, I said, Daddy, why? And he said, Donna, I don't know. And so they managed to work things out, and they were married until 1989, when Mom found out that Carole was still in his life. She found out years before, but not only Carole, but that there was another one, and Dad wasn't being as careful as far as shielding things from the family. And so Mom and it was the 80s. If you remember, AIDS was very, very prevalent in the 80s. And Mother had grandchildren by then. And she was very concerned, not only for herself, but that any of the grandchildren could be affected by it. So she just told Dad, I can't deal with this anymore. And so Dad moved out, but he let several weeks go by. He'd call every couple of weeks, can I come home? Can I come home? And she kept telling him no, and he realized finally that was it. So he asked, he said, can I come to the house and get the little TV in the master bedroom? She said, you can have anything in this house that you want. And as he's carrying the little TV down the stairs to the truck, she hears him sniffling, and she said, what's wrong? And he said, I don't want to leave. And she said, I know. But she said, you see that pool right there? That's how many tears I've cried for the last 34 years. And she said, I'll always love you, but I cannot live like this any longer. So he had a decision to make, because he had 2 girlfriends at the time. And he even asked Mother, he said, well, which one should I go with? And she told him, she said, neither one of them, but if you have to choose one, I'd take Pam over Carole, because she's evil incarnate.
Why did she have that opinion of her back then? And how did she know anything about her?
Carole had sent Mother a letter. It was an 11-page, single-typed, single-spaced letter in August, I believe it was, of August of 90, I believe was the date on that. And just going into how she loved Dad so much, she would be willing to step out of his life if Mom would just take him back. She did not want him being with Pam, that Pam was not good for him. That she would have killed her first husband to be with Dad.
An 11-page single-spaced letter, okay? To me, that just speaks volumes by itself. But then when you read what's in the letter, and by the way, you can go to courttv.com. We have posted that letter so you can take a look at it. courttv.com. We've got the 11-page Carole Baskin letter up for you tonight. And we're going to continue this interview, part 3, tomorrow night on the program. Get more insight into the life of Don Lewis and Carole Baskin and what happened here.